country to where it should be. I believe that Nigeria has everything it takes to be a top 20 global economy, and I would like to contribute my part or my quota to that effort. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, sir, my colleagues, my names are Aliyu Magatakarda Wamaku, representative Federal Constituency of Sokoto State. Mr. Nominee, I have two simple questions for you. One, your attainment in Ogun State focused on IGR. How do the effective strategy for IGR production can be deployed in your new assignment in the ministry you may find yourself? Two, as someone who grew up outside Nigeria, you could be classed as diaspora. What role do you see this community playing in the new Nigeria? Thank you.
Senator Hassan Mohammed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name's Mohammed Hassan. I represent Yobe South. My question to you, Madam, is on the economy. A few weeks ago, at the end of the meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee of the CBN governor came out to say that we were heading for an economic recession in 2016. Now, he said unless some proactive steps are taken, we will be there. So in your view, what do you suggest are those proactive steps? Secondly, what are those symptoms that you consider us getting to this recession? That's that. Secondly, the policy on Treasury single account. You know, so far the sum of 689 billion has been withdrawn from the banking system. That has led to serious liquidity pressure in the system. In your view, what would you suggest that, you know, knowing fully well that public funds are a major source of major source of funds in the banking system. So what would you suggest in your own view that will help the liquidity position in the banking system? Thank you.
Senator Namilikon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I remain sincerely yours, Adeosun Olamilekon, representing Lagos West Senatorial District, the biggest senatorial district in Nigeria. Yes, in terms of order. Mr. Chairman, distinguished colleague, let me join other distinguished colleague of this Alu chamber in congratulating Mrs. Kemi Adeosun as one of the ministerial nominee. Yes, I haven't gone through your CV. I painstakingly look line by line and notice that you have a wealth of experience in the area of financing. Let me start by saying one, if peradventure you are posted to the Ministry of Trade and Investment with your over 26 years of cognate experience in both private and public sectors, what will you be advising the Federal Executive Council in attracting foreign investment into this country? Two, looking at your background, and the president decide otherwise, that with your curriculum vitae that you're giving to us, you should go to the Ministry of Finance. The following.
Order, please.
Looking at the budgetary system of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as it currently were, we have a budget where we have over 78% of the total budget in financing recurrent expenditure, and just a paltry sum of 22% in financing the capital expenditure. Will you support, one, the reduction in the number of agencies from 601 to 106 as proposed by the Oronsoye panel report? Two, will you agree that the recurrent expenditure should be reduced at the expense of the capital expenditure? Three, with the burden of looking for finances in financing the capital expenditure of this country, and it is put before you that there is need for us to deregulate the downstream sector, will you support, and why? Four, looking at the Treasury single account, which in what is contained in your CV, that is something that you have already started implementing as a state. And looking at the line of the budgetary expenditure of the federal government, which is divided into three. One, there are agencies of the government that are fully funded by the nation budget. Two, there are agencies of the government that are partly funded by the federal budget. And three, there are agencies that are self-financing. How will you implement the Treasury single account? Five, I put it before you, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, going through your CV and your duty as the Honorable Minister of Commissioner for Finance in Ogun State, I noticed that while recommending for the state various sources of financing, what is ascribed to be the cheapest source of financing, that is approaching the capital market, you are silent on it. Your state have not taken advantage of this market. Is it that your position is that you don't support that state or the federal government should approach this market in financing their capital expenditure, knowing fully well that the interest element charge cannot be compared
Put the question.
with that of banks? Sir?
Put the question.
Yeah, these are my questions. I'm putting the question.
The last question. Put the last question.
The last question. Will you support and recommend to the Federal Executive Council the use of capital markets in financing the budget of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? Lastly, Mr. Chairman, I would like to rest my case. Thank you.
Mrs. Adeosun, you take the question. Any other you prefer?
Thank you very much, distinguished Senator. Senator Wamako's question about IGR and the role of IGR at the federal level. As we all know, the oil price has fallen. In fact, yesterday it closed below $50. And we had been getting oil at as high as 110. Now, oil represents just 9% of government revenue. So what that's telling us is that the majority of the economy is not actually contributing much to government revenues. So IGR, non-oil revenues, which is what we're really talking about, become absolutely critical. So we need now to implement So we need to implement strategies to improve our IGR, to improve our collections. And that's something I was involved in and we did in Ogun State, where we moved the IGR from 750 when we came in and we went as high as 6 billion. It's come down a little bit now with the economy slowing down, but it can be done. It's about mapping all the processes, seeing where the money is leaking and plugging those leakages. And that's what needs to be done, and it needs to be done very urgently across all government. All revenue generating agencies of government need to be part of that process. The other thing is we need to chase out cash. Everywhere that people transact in cash, there are leakages. So we need to ensure that we engage technologies and different channels of collection so that people are not paying cash, because wherever in our culture we tend to send people to do things for us. If you do it yourself through electronic channels, the money doesn't leak. So government revenue as a percentage of GDP in Nigeria is just 5%. The standard in developing economies is 20%. So we need to set ourselves very aggressive targets to plug the leakages and to get in additional non-oil revenue. And that will help us to deal with the oil price, the effects of the oil price decline. The question about my representing the diaspora, I think yes, I do, and I'm very proud of that. I think the diaspora have a huge role to play in any developing economy. If you look at Israel, their diaspora are a huge part of their economy. If you look at Ireland, which became the Celtic Tiger, the Irish in America supported them. We have Nigerians in virtually every country of the world, and they can support us through diaspora bonds, financing. They can also support us with skills, and I think that it's an asset we need to harness. And so I'm very happy to be referred to as diaspora. Senator Hassan's question, that the CBN governor said we are potentially heading for recession unless we take certain steps. We're not in recession, we're in slowdown. And actually the GDP is still positive. And it's, even though oil's contribution is negative, the GDP is still growing. So that tells us that the non-oil sector is growing. And if we can harness that, we can actually come out of the problems. And where is the growth? The growth is in agriculture, the growth is in services, the growth is in trade. So if we put policies in place to support that growth, we can avoid recession. And what are the policies that we need to look at? We need to consider most of the growth, and it must be inclusive growth, because we need to create jobs. That's a huge commitment that this administration has made, that it will be inclusive growth that creates jobs, that creates wealth. And the biggest creator must be the private sector. We cannot continue to grow the size of the public sector. It's got to be the private sector. So we need to look at what are the constraints, what are the things that are causing businesses not to grow. The biggest challenge, I believe, is our infrastructure. We need to invest heavily in infrastructure to generate business and to link areas of the nation that have advantage but can't turn it into money, can't monetize it. And that infrastructure is power. That infrastructure is rail. That infrastructure is road. For as long as it is cheaper to move a container of tomato paste from Amsterdam to Lagos than it is to move it from Kano to Lagos, we are not going to be competitive. We are not going to create jobs. And the constraints are around infrastructure. So we need to stimulate our economy by investing heavily in infrastructure, and that will get the growth, and that will hopefully help us to avoid recession. On the TSA, we actually introduced TSA in Ogun State in 2011. We had over 500 bank accounts, and we were borrowing. We would go to the banks for overdrafts. When we consolidated our accounts, firstly we found over 2 billion naira. Some of it had been dormant for 10 years, 20 years. So the first thing we did, we recovered a lot of money, and I know that the federal government too has recovered a huge amount of money. The other thing that happens as a result of the TSA is that it reduces our borrowing costs, because suddenly, instead of borrowing, we became lenders. In fact, we were earning interest on the money, and I'm sure the federal government, I saw the Q1 2015 figures, it's positive. Rather than the government being a net borrower short term, it's now a net lender. Now, what is the effect of that on the economy? The effect on that on the economy is if government is not borrowing as much, interest rates should come down. And if interest rates are coming down, then businesses can borrow and be able to compete. So it's absolutely important. The TSA is an absolutely very important economic tool that we all need to support. Now, the question about the effect on the banks, I would say the banks are not in business to sit on government money. The banks are in business to go out and lend to the real sector. So when they're no longer having some cheap funds, the banks are very creative. They will get moving, they will go out, they will look at businesses that maybe before they would have rejected. They will look at them and now be ready to lend. So in the short term there may be some discomfort arising from the TSA implementation, but long term it's an absolutely critical tool. The other thing about the TSA is it gives visibility of revenues. So we had a situation where some agencies have very creative ways of hiding money. You can't hide money with a TSA regime. Everything is seen. And then the question then is, what you want to spend, do you have approval for it? Rather than somebody just sitting down somewhere, no one saw his revenues, just spending, as the money is coming in, they're spending more and more. It's actually bad accounting, it's bad economics. So I'm a great fan of the TSA. Senator Amamilekon's question, what would I do in trade and investment to attract foreign investment? Foreign direct investment, and there are two types of foreign investment. Foreign investment in bonds, in shares, is very short term. If things are not good, they move their money. The foreign investment that we need is foreign direct investment, where they come in and open factories and create jobs for our people here in Nigeria. And what do we need to do to encourage that? It's the same thing I said before, it's infrastructure. If we get our infrastructure right, there are opportunities. And companies are coming in, but we need to accelerate that so that we can create jobs. Nigeria is a huge, huge consumer market. And most people are importing, sending their containers across, and we are buying. And what we're trying to say to the world now is, we don't want to buy. We want you to come and make it here so that our children are employed and they get the benefit of what we're spending. So we need to understand what are the limitations that are causing people not to invest. Recently, I think the World Bank produced a report and said that we were number 170 over 189 as the worst place to do business. Interestingly, when we got to Ogun State in 2011, Ogun was ranked 35 out of 36 as the worst state to do business. And what was done under the auspices of the governor was a team was put together, multidisciplinary team, and we sat down and we worked through what are the issues, what is the problem. Sometimes it was just cumbersome documentation, sometimes it was confusion, sometimes it was agencies not cooperating. I think we need to do the same thing at a federal level, and I think we need to set ourselves target. They can't just keep on coming year after year and telling us we're bad and we're not doing anything. We need to set ourselves a target that we want to move up by 10 places, and let's hold ourselves accountable, because if we address all those limitations, the investment will come in. And sometimes it's confusion between the three layers of government. Federal is saying one thing, state saying another thing, local government saying another thing. We need to have joined up thinking, because we all need to focus on the economy. So I think there's never going to be a better time to push through some of those changes that are needed. In finance, I was asked about the budgetary system and whether I would support a reduction in recurrent or a reduction in the number of agencies. The truth is, we cannot continue to spend 78% of our money on recurrent. The easy way to look at it is recurrent is what we spend today. It's like breakfast, it's like dinner. Capital is what we're investing for tomorrow. Definitely skewed in favor of capital. Now, how do we do this? It's three things for me. One, we need to increase our revenues. The money actually has to be there in order for us to be able to spend it in the first place. Two, we have to introduce better cost efficiencies. How are we spending money? Is there value for money? Do we measure the effectiveness of what we spend? Or do we just give people a budget and let them get on with it? So we need to improve things like audits. We need to improve things like compliance that will ensure that the money that is spent judiciously. I think the third thing, and whether it's achieved by a reduction in the number of agencies or recurrent, is that we need to look for other sources of funding. We have to accept that government cannot fund everything. So we need to do partnerships. Public-private partnerships are going to be hugely important tools to deliver the infrastructure that we need. We need to recognize if we're waiting for government to do everything, we won't do anything. So we need to change our funding model for capital to achieve a better mix between recurrent and capital. I think I have.
Senator Albert.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, let me join my colleagues in saying congratulations to Mrs. Adeosun. I've had the privilege of working with you.
Order, please. Order, please.
And I know the valuable contributions you make towards the management of funds. And on the basis of what we have seen on your CV, you are nothing more than a financial expert. So I'm only going to concentrate my 3 questions in the areas of finance. 70% of our population, active populations, are unemployed in Nigeria. And studies have shown that by 2020, Nigeria will have minimum of 100 million unemployed Nigerians, which of course you know is a social crisis. How can we, or how can you advise government if after the confirmation by your convention in the Senate, you are posted to the Minister of Finance? What will be your advice to the government, and what economic policies will you prefer to help government solve the massive unemployment crisis in Nigeria? Then another issue is in budgeting. There have been comments made on a zero budgeting system. How do you think this can be attained? And how relevant is this for such a large and complex economy as Nigeria? Then on efficiency, you have said something about it. How will you advise this government through efficiency on cost reduction without necessarily compounding the unemployment crisis we have in Nigeria currently? So I thank you, and once again I congratulate you. Thank you.
Ibrahim Umar Kofi.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My distinguished colleagues, my name is Umar Ibrahim Kulhi, representing Katsina Center, the Home of Hospitality, Katsina Dakin Kara. Sir, my question goes straight to our nominee. My first question is, reckless waivers, tax evasion and avoidance, unnecessary concession and remittance of revenue by revenue generating agencies constitute a major impediment to expedient flow of funds into the account. What strategy do you adopt to check the officials' malpractice in the returning of these benefits over the years? Second, the deliberate failure of the Federal Minister of Finance in provision of effective supervisory mechanism over subsidiary agencies identified as a major setback responsible for some malpractice that constitute effective sabotage.
Distinguished Senator, I think you have to go a bit slowly. No, I can't hear you. I doubt the nominee can hear you too. So, put the question. Slowly, put the question slowly. Yeah.
Reckless waivers, tax evasion and avoidance of payment, unnecessary concession and non-remittance of revenue by revenue generating agencies constitute a major impediment to expedient flow of funds into the generation account.
Distinguished colleagues, let us carry on. Order, please. The distinguished senator has the floor. Order, please.
Sir, I will slow down as slow as possible. What I'm simply saying is reckless waivers, tax evasion and avoidance, unnecessary concessions, and non-remittance of revenues by revenue-generating agencies constitute a major impediment to efficient flow of funds into the Federation account. My question is, what strategy do you adopt to take these official money policies and retardment the Nigerian problem over the years? That is one. My second question, sir, the deliberate failure of Federal Minister of Finance in provision of effective supervisory mechanism over subsidiary agencies has been identified as a major setback responsible for some money policies that constitute economic sabotage. What strategy do you employ to revise this and reset velocity? That's my question. Senator questions.
Senator John.
I hope you've got them. Mr. President, my name is John Owan Eno, Cross River Central. Madam Nominee, my first question is, a few weeks ago, JP Morgan delisted some of the federal government's bonds. Are you satisfied with the case made by JP Morgan? Are you satisfied with a combination of monetary fiscal policies that the CBN is pursuing in this regard to be able to respond to this? That's number one. Number two, you've spoken about the need to expand the tax base, revenue base, all that. Earlier on in the day, the former governor of Lagos State came here and talked about, when he became governor, how many more people were brought onto the tax net, about 5 million, and says there's a balance of about another 5 million. How challenging really is it to expand the tax base as a major source of expanding the revenue base for the country? The last question has to do with AMCON. As a financial expert, I'm sure you saw through the process of the setting up of AMCON. A few days ago in the House of Reps, AMCON came under hammer in terms of how it's conducted, in terms of how its deep involvement in toxic assets and all that. What do you think is the problem of AMCON today as it is? And what would be your advice going forward? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Chair. I'm Senator Abdullah Adamu, representing Nasarawa West Senatorial District. The Right Honorable Nominee, over the last 25 to 30 years, from the mid-80s of the 20th century to date, there has been pressure from different directions on Nigeria to formally devalue its currency. Given the type of economy we have, a one-line revenue-based economy that you've just told us, or reminded us, that is a huge consuming economy, to consider whether or not we accept to devalue our currency. In other words, what is the advantage or disadvantage of such a step if we are to contemplate it at all? My second question, the financing regime of our economy is such that does not accommodate other potential areas or sectors of growing our economy, diversifying our economy, either than the oil and gas and those who are into trading in consumptive items into the country. Other areas that hold great potential like agriculture and solid minerals do not appear to enjoy any reception from our banking institutions. What, as a finance major, what is your attitude to this, and in what way would you address the issues if and when you are confirmed as a Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria?
Good questions. You want to take the next question?
Thank you, distinguished senators, for those questions. The question about unemployment, I think, is probably the most important question that we're all facing today. And the rate of our population growth, or the projections of our population growth, are such that we have to get a grip of the unemployment challenge, because otherwise there'll be very serious social consequences. In my own view, the best way to achieve this is by growing the economy. And understanding that there are two solutions to unemployment. One is a job, and the other is entrepreneurship. And we need to focus on both. I'll first of all speak about jobs. Jobs will be created when the economy grows, and all those things I discussed about growing infrastructure, improving the ease of doing business, will create jobs and opportunities for our people. But beyond that, there is entrepreneurship. I think one of the biggest assets we have in Nigeria is actually the entrepreneurial spirit of our people. Our people just see opportunities everywhere. We're resilient, we're hardy. I think that's something we need to capitalize on. I think that's something we need to support. In particular, women in entrepreneurship. In America, when they've done the analysis of their recovery has been at small business level, and it's been women driven. So we need to find ways to actually unlock that and support that so that the economy can grow. I think the challenges are going to be in funding. We need to bring down our interest rates. That's absolutely critical. Whether for entrepreneurship or job creation, the interest rates have to come down. They're far too high. At the moment, I believe people are borrowing north of 20%. In South Africa, it's about 9. In Algeria, it's 8. So unless you're in an illicit business, it's very difficult to make a profit and pay that kind of rate of interest. And the biggest driver of the interest rate is government borrowing. So we also, as government, need to look at our role in driving up the interest rate and see how we can help to bring down interest rates by looking at other sources of funding or other denominations of funding. You asked about zero-based budgeting and how relevant it was. With the deficit that we're facing on the fiscal side, we have to reconsider everything. What zero-based budgeting simply does is start from scratch. So every single line of the budget has to be justified from scratch. Whereas what we do at the moment is incremental budgeting. We just look at what we did last year and we either cut it or we increase it. And so of course there's a lot of inherent inefficiency that just gets carried over. So zero-based budgeting will be an amazing tool to use. The only problem with zero-based budgeting is extremely complex and it needs a lot of time. So I think in practical terms, what we probably need to do is, what I would consider is, or suggest, is that you start zero-based budgeting with your revenue-generating agencies, because that will help you to produce a surplus, and then you roll it out successively with other ministries. And it involves a lot of price testing, and it really involves questioning everything. And the answer to why does it cost this much cannot be that's what we paid last year. We go out, we price test, we benchmark. It's a process I've been involved in the UK, and it does deliver significant savings. So I think it's something we ought to look at embracing. Efficiency and cost reduction are absolutely critical without, and I don't think it needs to create unemployment necessarily. I think we just need to be far more conscious that the money just isn't there to be wasted. Chase out waste, chase out frivolous spending, chase out duplication, and you can actually deliver cost savings. You don't necessarily have to begin to sack people. Senator McCarthy's question, I think, was on waivers and concessions. Did I get the question right? I think we need to review the use of waivers and concessions in its entirety. And I think the whole hygiene and process around it needs to be revised. And I'm very sure it's something that is very high on the list of initiatives for the administration. Waivers, there must be a business case for a waiver, and there must be review of the waivers, and there must be constant, and there must be transparency around who has been granted waivers and for what reason. There were two questions on foreign exchange. I think, if you don't mind, I'll try and merge them together about the exchange rate. we've just suffered an oil shock, and as a result of which we have devalued. Now, we're not the only economy to have devalued. Russia devalued, Venezuela devalued, all the oil economies have come under pressure with their currency. The problem is that markets tend to overreact. So if you leave the market to sort something out, the market will overreact. So what the CBN governor has done is just brought in some breathing space. Because if we allowed the market to continue, all our reserves would have been depleted. What we need to do is to strategize. And the solution will not just be exchange rate. Exchange rate is not a silver bullet. It's not a wonder drug. It has to be accompanied with fiscal policies and monetary policies and industrial policies. So, for example, I'm jumping back to the unemployment question. We need to increase made in Nigeria. Even me, we all need to buy made in Nigeria, eat made in Nigeria, drink made in Nigeria as far as possible to support the economy, and that will also help us to support the exchange rate. So there are pros and cons around devaluation. I think that adjusting the foreign exchange on its own, in isolation, will not solve our problems. And I think what the CBN governor has done is right. It's bought us some breathing space. I'm done.
Questions from 8 senators. I think we can count Olamilekan's on like 3. And she's been here for. So, is it the wish of the Senate that she can take her leave now?
I don't know what one word you will use for Kemi Adeosun. Some persons might agree if I say sharp, very, very sharp. It's one you want to say, oh, she's there and up there and she has all that. But let me leave it to before we get to the next person that is coming on is Hadi Sirika from Katsina State. Now, what do you think about Adeosun? What does she strike you?
I think very brilliant presentation. She answered the questions quite capably. Touched on taxation, touched on issues about budget, issues about how to fast track development, build new infrastructure, and generally give the economy a better standard than what we have now. So I think such a person would be very useful in helping formulate policies that's going to move the economy to a better